All right, so tell me why running? What got you started running?
I was always a sports person, hockey player, field hockey when I was a young person, fairly good. Didn't enjoy the training so much for sport, and if anyone said in those days run a 15k run for a training, no. But then life got in the way. I went to university, dropped out, went overseas and got myself into a process of addiction.
Talk a little bit louder.
Which meant a 16-year battle after that, on and off, to actually beat it. Finally I beat it, back to New Zealand. And one of the things that got me actually back into rebuilding, I suppose, myself mentally was running, sport. I loved it and just loved that freedom out there. And it built from there, basically.
So what was your first few runs? What were they like?
They were hard work, the first few runs, but as time went on, I started to enjoy the running a bit more, and it became a challenge after that to run a half marathon, which I achieved, and the next process was a marathon. And back in the day, I used to think, well, who can run a marathon? How do those people do it? So the challenge became to run a marathon before I was 50, and I succeeded on that. I was never a great marathon runner, never a fast one. But I achieved them after about 25 marathons. I went on to the ultras, which meant I attempted a 67k run.
Wow.
And to be quite honest, I came off that 67k run better than I probably came off a marathon. It just seemed to suit me better. And I loved it. And of course, I just built from there on the ultras. It became a 100k run, then a 100-mile run, and eventually. I dreamt of some of these back-to-back runs that I'd read people doing, and after the Christchurch earthquake, which was my birth town, hometown in New Zealand, after their major earthquake, I decided to run from Auckland to Christchurch to raise money for them. And that was a distance of just over 1,000k, and which I did in 15 days.
Wow.
And raised 20k for Christchurch. So I mean, that was awesome. It was. And of course, then it rebuilt from there.
Well, that's amazing. So, what would you tell someone who is new to running and kind of gets intimidated by those who post, oh, I'm training for my marathon, or I just ran a half marathon, and it kind of makes them a little nervous? What do you say to someone who's just starting?
Bring it back to yourself and what you want. And again, any form of exercise to me has to be fun. Initially, it might seem a little painful, but you've got to me, if you're out exercising or trying that first run, to me the first one or two runs, you've got to feel as though you've done nothing, because then you will enjoy getting back up the next day. Down the track there might be a little bit of pain, but you learn to accept that. But again, to me, any form of exercise with running has to be fun, has to be enjoyable.
Yeah, awesome. So tell me about, you did a 24-hour Nonstop run. Is that what you did a while back?
I did one this year, and last year I did 2 72-hour
72 hours?
Nonstop. I did that twice last year. The first time I did it without sleep. I did have rest breaks, but without sleep for 72 hours, and I actually ended up doing 486k, which I think was about 302 mile.
In 3 days?
In 3 days.
Wow.
So that was without sleep. Later on in the year, I did another one for 72 hours. I did have power naps that time, 20-minute power naps. And I achieved probably 311 mile, I think it was that time. So, and probably ended up with a few more hallucinations towards the end.
Yeah.
Like stepping over white lines, thinking they were 1 foot off the ground. It was quite interesting.
So what's the hardest part of those runs?
Probably the hardest part is keeping yourself going, pacing yourself, and not looking at the end result. It's looking at keeping it back to small, achievable chunks, I suppose. It varies from person to person, but you've got to build yourself mentally over a period of time to be able to attempt to do those sort of back-to-back, long 72-hour runs.
Yeah, for sure. Do you listen to music at all when you run?
do I...
Do you listen to music when you run?
No, it's one thing I don't do. Out on the open road is I prefer to listen. I need to be able to listen to traffic
Oh, that's true.
and keep note on what's going on, because I do a lot of running on the open road, so it can be quite dangerous. So for me personally, I don't.
So what do you do? What do you think about? Do you have a way of kind of zoning out? Or?
There's so many different things. It's sometimes you try and solve all the world's problems, and you think you have, but of course you laugh afterwards and nowhere near it. Sometimes you think of your next break, your next holiday, if you're going to have one, or sometimes you just try and zone out and don't think.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you do that, you suddenly, in a sense, shake your head, whoops, I'm about 10 miles down the road.
Oh, that's awesome. Very cool. Well, we'll video more in a little bit.
Fantastic.